Sudsing the monster. Luke hadn't seen anything quite like it. The alien beast in front of him was enormous, at least 8 feet long, muscled like a jungle predator, but with silvery fur and a crown of bony, glimmering ridges along its skull. It resembled a cross between a panther, a bear, and a walking nightmare. And it smelled like something that had crawled out of a sulfur pit, rolled in fermented algae, and then been left out in the sun. So, naturally, Luke did what any half-sane human with soap and a hose would do. He bathed it. He didn't ask, didn't check protocol. He'd just assumed it was a work animal, some kind of cargo beast or exotic companion. It had wandered into the mechanics bay where Luke was stationed, filthy, whining and clearly agitated. So he'd tied it to a post, grabbed a bucket and got to scrubbing, and now he was going to die. A sharp, shrill screech cut through the air like a blade. "You touched him? You soaped him?" Luke blinked up from his crouch position, sponge still dripping in his hand. The beast was soaked in frothy bubbles, its fur sticking out at odd angles. It looked like a half-shaved yeti in a bubble bath. The screech had come from above. A figure stood on the grated mezzanine above the bay. She was lit by the pale blue overheads, her lavender skin glistening with what Luke could only hope wasn't rage sweat. Her eyes blazed like polished amethysts. "You mind stepping down here?" he called up nervously, "because I think your dog was rolling in sewage. No offense." "That," she spat, "is not a dog. That is a Braylock guardian, a sacred protector of my bloodline, and you've violated him." "Violated? It's a bath. I used citrus rinse and non-toxic shampoo." The girl, alien, obviously, was already descending, her long robes fluttering around her as if caught in some invisible wind. She moved like lightning, graceful and angry, closing the distance fast. Luke dropped the sponge and backed away. "Turker." Beast made a strange guttural sound, something between a growl and a sigh. "You've desecrated him," the girl snapped. "You've performed the cleansing ritual without right or permission. Do you know what that means on my world?" "Nope," Luke said honestly. "I've been here 3 weeks, still trying to figure out which direction the toilets flush. You are to be detained, judged, and likely disintegrated." Luke looked from the angry alien to the drenched beast, then back again. "You're overreacting. You soaped his tail." "That's where the smell was coming from." The beast, still dripping, suddenly lifted its head and made direct eye contact with Luke. Then it spoke, not roared, not growled, spoke in perfect accented English. "You have awakened me." The bay went silent. Even the soft hum of overhead lights seemed to hush. Luke blinked. "What?" Virea, the alien girl, stumbled backward, her fury replaced with wide-eyed horror. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The beast took a step forward. Suds slid off its massive haunches and puddled around its paws. The scent. The citrus. It unlocked the memories. Luke shook his head. Nope, I'm dreaming, or the soap fumes are getting to me." Virea finally found her voice. "Orak, speak no further. You are forbidden." But the beast, Orak, ignored her. "I remember the voice of the Makers. I remember the man with the fire hands. You are not him, but you carry his breath." "What the hell is happening right now?" Luke asked, half to himself. The bay doors burst open. 4 armored figures stormed in, weapons raised, alien enforcers in glinting black exosuits. Their visors glowed red, and their boots slammed against the metal floor like thunder. "Step away from the Guardian," one shouted. "Hands in the air." Luke obeyed instantly, raising his hands high. "Look, if this is about the shampoo—" "Silence, human. You've triggered a breach of sanctity. You will be detained." Virea stepped forward quickly. "Wait, he didn't know. He's ignorant of our customs. He performed the rite of purity unbidden. That is not ignorance. That is sacrilege." "Guys," Luke muttered, "I really just wanted to make the thing stop smelling like fermented fish guts." One of the enforcers moved toward him, binding his wrists with magnetic cuffs. Oryx snarled. Not a human word this time. A deep primal sound that echoed through the chamber like an earthquake. Every light flickered, tools clattered from shelves, and the floor cracked. The enforcers froze. Virea's face turned pale. He must not be harmed, Aurak growled. His touch has activated the key. He is chosen. What key? Luke barked. I touched you with a sponge, not a magic sword. But none of the aliens looked amused anymore. Virea slowly approached, her voice trembling. That phrase, the key, it's from our oldest myths. Before the age of silence. Before the purge. The purge of what? She turned to Luke. Of knowledge. Suddenly, Aurak slumped. His eyes fluttered. His breathing slowed. And he spoke again, softer this time. Beneath the temple, they buried the first memory. And, with that, the beast collapsed into the puddle of suds. They locked Luke in a holding cell, not a bad one, all things considered. Clean, padded bench, no shackles. But the guards outside were definitely on edge, and no one was answering his questions. A few hours passed, maybe more. Time was hard to track without a window or a clock. Then the door hissed open. Virea entered. She was no longer dressed in ceremonial robes. She wore a tight black suit, clearly meant for travel. She had a satchel slung over her shoulder, and her eyes, though still radiant, seemed calmer. I convinced them not to execute you. Wow, thanks. Guess I'll send a thank you card. You're still in danger, but I want to know more. More about what? She sat beside him. Not too close. Just enough. Aurak's words, the memory beneath the temple, the key. These are not things spoken lightly in our culture. They are remnants of old fears and older truths. Luke crossed his arms. You think I triggered something ancient by giving your space dog a bubble bath? Her eyes narrowed. I think you may be the first human to ever touch a guardian in centuries, and that matters. Why? Because you didn't die. Luke blinked. That's supposed to make me feel better? She stood. They'll move you to a more secure location tomorrow. Interrogation, genetic scans. They'll try to see if you're a threat or a mistake. Great. Looking forward to it. She hesitated at the door, then turned back. If you want answers, meet me at midnight, Mechanics Bay, South Wing. Don't let anyone follow. Why? Because I think Aurak's right. About what? She leaned in, voice barely a whisper. I think there really is something buried beneath the temple, and I think you're the only one who can unlock it. Voices of the Forbidden. Luke wasn't sure what was worse, the cell he'd been locked in earlier, or the fact that he was now willingly sneaking through a foreign alien base in Borrowed. Clothing with zero idea where he was going. The lights were dimmed to twilight mode, casting long blue shadows across the corridors. The air smelled like cooled metal and some kind of spicy mist that tickled the back of his throat. No patrols yet. That was either lucky or a trap. He checked the datapad Virea had slipped into his jumpsuit sleeve. The map was crude, probably, and sketched from memory, and half the labels were in a language that looked like it had been drawn by drunk spiders. Still, he found the swing mech marking. He reached the old mechanics bay without being spotted. The doors creaked open with a reluctant hiss. She was already there. Virea had changed again, this time wearing a thick cloak, a utility belt, strapped around her hips, and a hardened expression he hadn't seen before. I didn't think you'd come, she said softly. I didn't think I'd have to crawl through a ventilation shaft to get here either, Luke replied. I almost landed in someone's soup. Virea didn't laugh. Her expression was tight, eyes flicking around the room. She tapped a panel near the corner and a low hum passed through the air. Luke's skin prickled. What was that? Scrambler field. Blocks audio and thermal signatures. We've only got about 15 minutes before they realize we're missing. Luke raised a brow. Virea opened a storage crate. Inside was a thick cloth bundle. She unwrapped it carefully to reveal a small glowing orb, a pale, pulsing light like a dying star trapped in glass. It's called a Dranayan seed, she explained. It came from the ruins beneath the first temples. The old texts say it can reactivate locked lineage memory. You mean like waking up ancient knowledge? Something like that, she paused. Auric responded to your touch. That isn't supposed to happen. The Guardians were bred to be bonded to the royal bloodline. You're not part of us, not supposed to be. And yet, you think I'm some kind of chosen one? I think you're a mistake that's rewriting the rules. Luke stepped closer to the orb. The glow intensified faintly. That thing reacts to me too, he whispered. Viraya didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a second object from the crate, a triangular slate etched in symbols that shimmered as they moved. A memory shard, she said. It came from the temple Auric mentioned. You've been there? Only once. I was younger, disobedient. I wasn't supposed to go inside. My mother found me and sealed the entrance the next day, said it was poison, said the old knowledge would drive me mad. Luke's eyes narrowed. But you kept this? She nodded. And Aurac's words changed everything. What exactly are you hoping we'll find down there? Viraya looked up at him, really looked at him, not like a foolish outsider or a blasphemous mechanic, but like an equal. Truth, she said. And maybe a way to fix what our ancestors... You broke. They left the compound just before shift change. Viraya disabling the outer motion sensors, Luke crawling through a water reclamation shaft that smelled suspiciously like boiled swamp. Outside, the alien world was bathed in twin moons, one violet, one pale gold. The jungle beyond the base shimmered with phosphorescent plants that curled in on themselves as they passed. Strange insects buzzed in the distance, and something large and unseen howled far away, followed by silence. Luke had never felt smaller. You really trust me? He asked, as they hiked across a slick moss-covered ridge. No, Viraya said bluntly, but I trust Auric, and Auric trusted you. That's some serious leap of faith logic. Your people built empires on that logic. They reached the overgrown arch of the temple an hour later. The entrance was sealed, just like she said. Metal plates welded over stone glyphs, but when Luke placed his palm on the center symbol, the metal turned to dust. Viraya gasped. It recognized you. Guess I'm magic now. Inside, the temperature dropped instantly. The walls pulsed with veins of glowing mineral, lighting their path in eerie green tones. Statues lined the hall, humanoid but distorted. Long arms, elongated skulls, twin sets of eyes. Carvings of humans and her species working side by side filled the walls. I thought our ancestors were created by the ancients, Viraya murmured. That we were their final work before the skies closed. Luke pointed to a mural that showed humans boarding ships and taking off into the stars. These aren't gods, he said. They're explorers, scientists, and they left us behind. They reached a central chamber. A pedestal sat in the center with an indentation shaped exactly like the orb Viraya carried. She placed it carefully inside. The orb pulsed. Light filled the room. A figure materialized above them, a projection glitching slightly, humanoid but not quite human. Its voice echoed in perfect English. If you are seeing this, then the barrier has been broken. Viraya stepped forward, stunned. Who are you? The figure flickered. We are the Forerunners, children of Earth, architects of the seed worlds. This planet, Zirkel, was one of our earliest experiments in adaptive coevolution. Luke squinted. Wait, you're human? We were. Once. Our biology diverged as we adapted to different systems. But our core remains. The projection turned to Luke. You carry dormant resonance. Your DNA echoes the original code. You're saying I'm related to you. You are not the first to awaken, but you may be the last. Viraya's voice cracked. Why did you leave us? Because we had to. The refractors found us. They erased civilizations. We erased ourselves to hide what we built. Who are the refractors? Memory eaters, star slayers. They feared only one. Thing awakening. The projection glitched again. If Aurak spoke, then the time is short. The vault must be opened. The truth must be told. The light vanished. A slab slid open at the far end of the room, revealing stairs descending into pitch black. Luke swallowed. Why do I feel like going down there is a really bad idea? Because it probably is, Viraya said. Then she smiled. But we're going anyway. The stairs led them to a subterranean chamber, circular, with ancient consoles and crystalline nodes embedded in the walls. In the center floated a massive cocoon, translucent, humming, and filled with pulsing red light. Viraya approached slowly. It's alive, Luke stepped beside her. It's reacting. Then the voice returned, not from speakers, from inside their heads. You have awakened the second seed. It remembers the fall. It remembers the fire. The cocoon trembled. The refractors saw our light and feared its return. But now, the key has been touched, and the Guardian remembered. Luke's breath caught. Aurak, he was the last of the first bound, the protector of memory. And you carry the breath of the fire-makers. Viraya turned. To him, eyes wide. You're not just a human. Luke blinked. I'm really starting to wish I was. Suddenly the chamber lights flared, alarms, a high-pitched siren. They had been tracked. They followed us, Viraya growled, drawing a stun blade. Luke grabbed the orb and stuffed it in his pack. Time to go? Time to run. They barely made it out of the temple. Alien patrol ships hovered above the jungle, spotlights piercing the canopy. They sprinted through the undergrowth, ducking beams of light, dodging stun blasts that scorched the ground inches from their heels. They made it to a cave just as a patrol passed overhead. Inside, breathless, soaked in sweat, they collapsed against the wall. Viraya looked at him, voice trembling. We're in too deep. Luke stared into the dark, clutching the orb in his hands. And we haven't even opened the vault yet. The vault of forbidden memory. The cave was damp and narrow. Moss clung to the walls like skin. Somewhere in the dark, water dripped, rhythmically, echoing like a ticking clock counting down to something none of them could see. Luke sat cross-legged near the entrance, hugging his knees. He hadn't slept, not since they escaped the patrols, not since the glowing cocoon spoke to them in a voice that pierced bone. He looked across the cave. Viraya stood with her back against the stone wall, blade still clutched in her hand like she hadn't noticed the danger had passed. Her eyes were locked on nothing, distant. He broke the silence. You okay? She didn't answer right away. Then, finally, I lied to you. Luke blinked. Okay, cool. About what? The temple. The memory shard. Aurak. She looked down. I didn't just stumble into those things. My family, my mother was a high archivist, keeper of the silence. She knew the old secrets. She guarded them. Luke stood, brushing moss from his pants. Let me guess. You weren't supposed to go poking around the past. No one is. It's forbidden, heresy even. And yet, here we are. She looked at him, eyes shimmering violet in the dim light. Because Aurak spoke, and because you touched him. Luke let out a dry laugh. Still wrapping my head around the fact that giving your oversized cat a bath might have just triggered a galactic apocalypse. Not an apocalypse, she said. An awakening. He turned serious. What is the vault? Why do they want to stop us? Viraya lowered herself to sit beside him. The vault is legend. It was said to be the last safe archive, built by the Forerunners before they erased themselves. My mother used to whisper about it when she thought I was asleep. She said the vault held memories not just of our past, but of what's coming. Luke frowned. Prophecy, blueprints, she whispered, the kind of knowledge that could build or destroy entire star systems. A low growl echoed from the entrance. They froze. From the shadows stepped a familiar form, enormous and soaked from the jungle mist. Aurak. His silvery fur shimmered with dew. His bony ridges had healed. The beast looked calm, but his eyes burned. With sentience. You fled well, he said, his voice low and deep. But they are close, Luke stood. You tracked us? I was born to guard what you now carry. Aurak's gaze fell on Luke's satchel. The seed has chosen, and so I must follow. Virea looked uncertain. Why did you not speak? Before, all these years. Aurak's massive head turned toward her, because no one asked with kindness, until the human. Luke blinked. Wait. I triggered this because I was nice. You treated me with dignity, Aurak said. You did not seek to control. You simply cleaned the dirt from my skin. Luke rubbed his face. This is officially the weirdest diplomatic crisis in history. Aurak's eyes narrowed. And it's not over. They traveled by night. Aurak led the way, moving through the jungle like smoke. Virea and Luke followed, using terrain-masking cloaks to avoid sensor scans. The world around them hummed with alien life, but nothing dared approach the Guardian. 2 nights passed. On the 3rd, they reached the mountain. It was not what Luke expected. No grand spire, no monument to ancient builders. Just a moss-covered slope, its base swallowed by vines and roots. At its heart, a narrow crevice, a natural fracture. Aurak stopped. This is where memory sleeps. They entered. The tunnel spiraled downward, tighter with each step. The air grew colder, heavier. Lights embedded in the walls flickered to life. As they passed, reacting to Luke, I feel sick, he muttered. You're close to the source, Virea said, steadying him. It's waking up. At the bottom, they found it. The vault, a colossal chamber carved in obsidian. Runes covered every inch of the walls, glowing faintly, pulsing like heartbeats. In the center stood a platform. Above it hovered a crystalline lattice shaped like a star, but spinning. The seed in Luke's pack hummed. He stepped forward. Wait, Virea whispered. Luke froze. From the shadows, a figure stepped out, tall, armored in flowing black and red. His face was hidden behind a mirrored mask. You've gone far enough. The voice echoed like steel dragged through gravel. Virea drew her blade. Enforcer, Aurak growled. Assassin, Luke stared. You people really need name tags. The enforcer took a step forward. That device is restricted. Surrender it and come with me. There may still be mercy. You mean reprogramming, Virea spat. Mind wipe, obedience serum. I know what they do. The enforcer turned his mask to her. You were always a disappointment to the Archivist Order. Yeah, well, she grinned. I inherited that, Aurak roared. Before the enforcer could react, the Guardian lunged. Steel met claw in a blur of motion. Sparks flew as claws raked armor. The enforcer drew an energy blade, sleek, precise, deadly. Virea leapt into the fight, blades clashing, sparks flying. The chamber lit with energy flashes and the sounds of war. Luke did the only thing he could. He ran to the pedestal. The seed pulsed in his pack like a living heart. He pulled it out, holding it toward the lattice. The moment the seed neared the structure, it fused, floating, spinning, anchoring itself into the vault core. A voice filled the room. Identity confirmed. Cross-galactic genetic signature matched, initiating memory release. The room shook, light exploded from the walls, and suddenly Luke wasn't standing in the vault anymore. He stood in space, not truly, but in a vision. A memory. Stars glittered around him. Massive ships, human and alien alike, glided through the void. Worlds bloomed with life. We were one, said a voice behind him. A union of species, dreamers, builders, scientists. Until they came, the vision shifted. Darkness poured from the stars. Ships like knives, machines like insects, creatures that fed on thought itself. The refractors. They devoured planets, burned libraries, tore memories from living minds. We hid, the voice said. We rewrote genomes, buried ourselves beneath forgetfulness. We left warnings, we left keys. Luke saw Aurak, not as a beast, but as a human-like being, silver-haired and radiant, stepping into a machine. I gave up form, became the guardian, waiting for someone worthy. Then he saw himself, not him exactly, but someone who looked like him, taller, dressed in ancient robes. Standing on Earth, you are his echo. The vision shattered. Luke collapsed. When he came to, Virea was kneeling beside him. The enforcer lay dead, crumpled at the far end of the chamber. Aurak was wounded, burned along his side, but breathing. What? What did I see? Luke rasped. Virea helped him sit, a glimpse of what was, and maybe what needs to be again. Luke turned to the platform. A new object had emerged, a star-shaped prism glowing blue. What is it? He asked. Aurak spoke, voice soft. The beacon. It can awaken other seeds. Call them back. Luke stared. You mean humans? No, Virea said. All of them. Aurak nodded. The builders, the dreamers, the lost descendants scattered. Across galaxies, the vault is just one of many. The time of silence is ending. Luke held the beacon in shaking hands. I didn't ask for this, but you were chosen, Aurak said. Virea smiled faintly. And now the universe is watching. Echoes across the stars. For 2 days after the vault's awakening, the forest didn't sleep. Strange lights flickered above the canopy at night, auroras that shouldn't have existed in this atmosphere. Creatures sang songs in frequencies Luke's ears couldn't process, and every bird, insect, and breeze felt synchronized. It was as if the planet had started listening. Luke sat beside a small fire outside the cave, hands warming around a cup of broth that smelled faintly of roots and something metallic. His fingers still tingled from when he touched the beacon. Across from him, Virea was quiet, gazing at the stars. Aurak lay nearby, his side bandaged, resting. Every so often his ribs pulsed with golden light, his body knitting itself back together. At an unnatural pace, Luke finally spoke. I saw Earth, Virea looked at him. In the vision, he nodded slowly. But it wasn't Earth as I know it. It was clean, unified, cities like crystal, no borders, people worked together. I saw humans, but they weren't just us, they were mixed, like descendants of something older. Virea stirred the fire. You saw the origin timeline, before the divergence. Luke glanced at her. The divergence? She nodded. It's in the forbidden texts, the theory that long ago there wasn't alien or human, just people. The universe was once a single song, not scattered notes, but something shattered the harmony. Worlds were isolated, species forgotten, memory rewritten. Luke looked at the beacon beside him. This thing, it's not just a signal, is it? Virea shook her head. It's a call to reunite what was lost. Luke ran a hand through his hair. And the enforcer? There'll be more, she said. The Order won't stop. They fear what the vaults contain. They think unity will break their control. Aurak stirred. His deep voice rumbled. It will. That's the point. They moved at dawn. The beacon had to be activated from a point high enough to bypass planetary dampeners, a place where the signal could arc into deep space. There was only one option, Mount Sire, the tallest peak on the southern continent, and one of the last free zones not controlled by the Order. But getting there meant crossing the Whispering Wastes, an open desert scarred by old wars, where signals were scrambled and memories sometimes shifted without warning. Aurak warned them, both. The wastes test more than endurance. They test truth. Luke stuffed the beacon into a reinforced pack and slung it across his back. Whatever it takes. Virea smiled faintly. Just don't forget who you are in there. The Whispering Wastes were not silent. Despite the name, the wind sang. Voices, dozens, hundreds, rose and fell like echoes across time. Some sounded like laughter, others like screams, and some like whispers. In familiar voices, Luke walked beside Aurak, trying to ignore the strange pull in his chest. But hours into the journey, the air grew heavy, and the ground began to shimmer. He blinked, and suddenly he wasn't in the desert anymore. He stood in his childhood bedroom, the posters on the wall, the old laptop, his father yelling from the kitchen. The smell of burnt toast. "What the hell? You should have stayed home," came a voice from behind him. He turned. His father stood in the doorway, but his eyes were wrong, too wide, too dark. "You're not real," Luke said. "Real enough to remind you, you're not special. You're a janitor with delusions of grandeur." Luke clenched his fists. "You're a trick. You think the galaxy cares about kindness. You think washing a beast made you a hero. You're just a monkey with a mop." The figure stepped forward, but Luke didn't move. He stared into those eyes. "I'd rather be a kind janitor than a cowardly god." The image shattered. The desert returned. Viraya stood nearby, panting, blade drawn. "They got to you too?" He nodded. "Memories. Twisted." She nodded back. "Keep walking. Don't stop. Don't listen." Behind them, Aurak howled, deep and primal, sending a ripple through the air. The whispers fled. By nightfall, they reached the obsidian ridge that bordered the wastes. On the other side, the air was clearer, and ahead, looming like a claw reaching. For the stars was Mount Sair, but at its base was a problem, a military outpost, steel turrets, scanner drones, dozens of guards. Luke stared through the binoculars. "Any way around?" Viraya shook her head. "The activation relay's at the peak. There's only one path, and it runs straight through." Aurak growled. "Then we make a new path, through them." Luke grimaced. "Subtle." "Necessary," Viraya said. That night, they struck. Aurak charged the perimeter at moonrise, howling like a god. The guards scrambled, panicked by a creature they thought extinct. Drones lifted into the air, only to be shredded by Aurak's claws or grounded by Viraya's EMP darts. Luke slipped through the chaos, hugging shadows. He found the relay tower access panel behind a maintenance shed, a single plug. He pulled out. The beacon. It hummed, recognizing the connection, authenticating, cross-galactic pulse initiating. The tower lights turned blue. Above them, the sky shimmered. A beam of light, pure, golden, shot into the heavens. The beacon's pulse rippled through space like a sonar ping, faster than light, deeper than sound. It reached moons, satellites, stations buried beneath alien oceans. Luke could feel it, like a thread stretching across galaxies, waking ancient things. Then something answered. A ping came back. Then another, and another. Viraya grabbed his arm. "They're responding." Aurak stood behind them, wounded but triumphant. "The seeds are awakening." Luke stared up at the sky where new stars had begun to glow. Moving stars. "I think we just lit a galactic match." But the moment of awe was cut short. Alarms screamed from the outpost. A new ship descended, sleek, black, deadly. The order had arrived. From the belly of the craft emerged a figure more terrifying than the enforcer, tall, pale, dressed in pure, white robes that shimmered like liquid metal. Her voice echoed across the mountain. "By order of the Silence, you are charged with technological heresy and genetic tampering." Luke stepped forward. "We haven't tampered with anything. We remembered." The woman raised a hand, and every soldier behind her aimed their rifles. Ignorance was a mercy. "Now you've stolen it." Viraya stepped forward, blades drawn. Aurak roared. But Luke raised the beacon again, and it flared with power. "No," he said. "We shared it." The signal pulsed again, and across the sky, ships began to arrive. They didn't belong to the Order. They bore strange symbols, spirals, suns, glyphs no one had seen in millennia. The others had heard the call, and they were coming, the war for memory. The mountain trembled. Above the clouds, the night sky was no longer still. It pulsed with movement, ships descending like glinting stars, each bearing symbols not seen for millennia. But below, on the stone ridge of Mount Sayer, the order had already drawn its line. The woman in white stood unmoved as her soldiers spread into formation, rifles locking onto Luke, Virea, and the wounded Aurak. Wind howled through the peaks, tugging at her robes, but her face, ageless and stern, betrayed no fear. Luke could barely breathe. The beacon still pulsed in his hands, warm and alive. Its last activation had not only sent a signal, but had begun to transform. Thin, crystalline threads extended up his forearm like glowing veins, spreading slowly as if syncing with his DNA. Virea stood beside him, blades drawn, shoulders heaving. From exhaustion, her face had a single expression: resolve. Behind them, Aurak swayed, chest rising heavily, eyes narrowed. His wounds were deep, but his presence alone still shook the air with power. The woman in white stepped forward. "Surrender the beacon, and I will spare your minds." Luke narrowed his eyes. "That's not much of a life, is it? Mind-wiped, compliant, forgotten." "Obedience is not death," she replied calmly. "It is peace. The galaxy does not need memory. It needs order." Virea took a step forward. "You're afraid, because once the truth spreads, your order ends." The woman's eyes gleamed. "Truth without control is chaos." A soldier raised his weapon. Too early. Aurak lunged. With a guttural roar, the beast tore into the line of soldiers like a storm. Screams followed, and plasma fire lit the mountain's edge. "Go!" Aurak bellowed. "Activate the second phase." Luke didn't hesitate. "Where?" Virea grabbed his hand. "There's a relay at the summit, a Forerunner interface. It'll amplify the beacon beyond this system." The battle erupted behind them as they ran. Screams, flashes, and bone-shaking roars followed their ascent. Drones sliced through the sky, chasing them. A bolt of energy scorched the rock inches from Luke's head. They reached the summit. There, at the mountain's very peak, stood a monolith of black stone, humming with energy. Unlike the vault, this interface was raw and ancient, its symbols alive, shifting even without being touched. Luke approached it. The beacon in his hand flared, recognizing the monolith, and shot a bolt of light directly into its core. The interface responded instantly, glowing brighter, until it pulsed with a blue wave that spread outward in all directions. The sky shook. Clouds parted as rings of energy expanded like ripples through water. Above them, the first of the approaching ships entered orbit. One descended, sleek and silver, triangular like a blade, with no visible propulsion. It hovered silently above the summit, and from its underside, a single platform lowered. A figure stepped out, humanoid, tall, skin like burnished copper, eyes like glowing sapphire stars. They wore no armor, just flowing robes of midnight blue stitched with symbols eerily similar to the ones etched on the beacon. The newcomer spoke, not aloud, but into their minds. "The call has been heard." The Forerunner's answer. Luke staggered slightly. "You're one of them." "I am descended of the origin cycle. My people have hidden in the voids between galaxies, waiting for the seed to awaken." Virea sheathed her blades. "And now?" "Now we remember." Behind them, the battle below reached its crescendo. The woman in white rose into the air, carried by magnetic propulsion, fury rippling in her eyes. "You dare summon the ancients?" she snarled. "They are extinct." The Forerunner turned to her, voice calm. "Extinct only to the blind. You erased history, but history does not forget you." She raised her arms, and the air twisted. Suddenly the sky tore open. A dark ship appeared, a massive construct unlike any other. Its surface rippled like liquid shadow. Its arrival silenced the winds. Even the Forerunner paused. Luke felt his chest tighten. "What is that?" Virea's voice was barely a whisper. "A refractor-class warship. The Forerunner frowned. They should not still exist. The woman in white laughed. The refractors were not destroyed. They were absorbed. She extended her arms, and the beacon flickered in Luke's hands, its light dimming slightly. "They feed on memory," she hissed. "You brought a signal into the galaxy, but they heard it too." Luke gritted his teeth. "Then we finish this before they come." He looked at the Forerunner. "Can the beacon stop them?" The figure hesitated. "It cannot fight them, but it can unlock the last defense." "What defense?" "You," Luke blinked. "Me? I'm not a soldier." "No, you are a carrier. The genetic link to the origin. Unmodified. Unbroken. The beacon chose you because your blood still carries the signal key." Viraya turned to Luke. "You're the Echo, the descendant of the first unifier." Luke's legs almost buckled. "So what am I supposed to do? Give a speech?" The Forerunner placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, you remember. And then you choose." They led him to the beacon's final interface. As Luke placed his hands on the stone altar, the beacon melted into light, entering his skin completely. His body convulsed, eyes rolling back, and suddenly he was everywhere. He stood in the Council of Worlds, hearing the old languages. He watched the rise of unity, humans, Avrians, Drelkin, and others forming a civilization that spanned galaxies. He watched the betrayal. The refractors, alien minds without empathy, rising from the darkness and consuming knowledge like fire. He saw the architects of memory, those who split themselves into pieces and scattered their descendants across worlds. "We do not win by destroying the enemy. We win by remembering who we are." Luke gasped and came back. The wind howled. The dark ship hovered overhead, preparing to strike, and Luke, changed now, stepped forward. The threads of light that had crawled up his arms now covered his body, glowing with a pulsing pattern. He no longer looked like just a man. He looked like the bridge between worlds. He raised his arms and remembered. The sky ignited, the ancient signal amplified, bursting outward like a second sun. The refractor ship screeched in rage, its hull buckling. As the wave of memory struck it, it began to fracture, not from force, but from truth. Each piece of its armor remembered what it once was, metal formed by the lost builders, stolen and twisted, and so it began to reject itself. The ship imploded. The woman in white screamed, lunging at Luke, but Aurak was faster. With a final mighty leap, the Guardian tackled her mid-air, both of them vanishing into the beam of light as it exploded across the summit. The explosion was silent. When it faded, only Luke remained. Hours later, silence returned to the mountain. The Forerunners gathered the fallen. Viraya knelt beside what remained of Aurak's blade, his symbol. Luke sat on the ridge, staring at the stars. Viraya joined him. "You remembered." He nodded. "More than I wanted to, but just enough." He looked at her. "Aurak, he fulfilled his purpose," she said. "Guardians are meant to awaken the Echo. He knew what would happen." Luke stared into the sky. "Do you think they'll come back? The refractors?" She paused. "They always do, but next time we'll be ready." The Forerunner approached, bowing slightly. "The beacon is no longer needed. The memory is within you. The seeds have answered, and the galaxy watches." Luke looked at them. "So, what happens now?" "Now you lead." Luke looked down at his hands. For the first time in his life, they didn't feel like hands that scrubbed grease from engine panels. They felt like hands that could shape the future. The final memory. The stars had never looked this close. Luke stood on the platform of the Forerunner ship, orbiting high above the scarred world below. The beacon was gone, absorbed into his being, but its pulse still hummed in his bones. He could feel memory stretching beyond the boundaries of time, wrapped in every particle of space. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was the last living Echo of the architects. And now it was time to decide what that meant. Behind him, Virea watched quietly. She had changed too, not in appearance, but in presence. She no longer moved like a lost warrior. She walked like someone who had found something worth protecting. Say the word, she said softly, and they'll all listen. He turned. The Forerunners had assembled, dozens of them. Some were like the first, tall, robed, almost angelic. Others came in unfamiliar forms, light-based, crystalline, even aquatic bodies suspended in containment. Suits, each represented a lineage that had once guided the stars, and they were waiting for him. The council chamber opened like a blooming flower of light and steel. At its center hovered a holographic map of the galaxy, pulsing, unstable. Blips of red energy flickered at the edges, refractor movements. The beacon had lit up the galactic memory, and in doing so, drawn out those who wanted it erased. The oldest Forerunner stepped forward. Her body shimmered like flowing glass. Echo of the seed, you now hold what we forsook long ago. Memory untainted, truth unaltered. What will you do? Luke swallowed. I don't know how to lead a galaxy. Then start by leading one world. He looked at the map. Earth pulsed faintly, still there, still quiet. A home he barely remembered, but still loved. I don't want to rule, Luke said. I want to restore. The council leaned in. Then listen, he continued. We can't just rebuild what was. That's what got us here in the first place. We tried to make things perfect, and we ended up erasing everything that made us real. Pain, love, chaos, memory. He stepped closer to the projection. I want to return those memories, planet by planet, species by species. Not force them, but offer them. Let the galaxy choose. The Forerunner nodded solemnly. And if the refractors strike again? Luke didn't flinch. Then they'll face a galaxy that remembers what it means to resist. A month later, the transmission tower on Earth's lunar outpost had never picked up anything like it. The signal didn't come as sound, but as images, ancient, surreal, vivid. Starships like cathedrals, cities in rings of light, beings of all forms standing together. The human technicians watched in awe, then the words followed. To all worlds, the echo has awoken. The age of memory returns. You will not be ruled. You will remember. Back on Earth, people whispered the name Luke Alren, the man who had vanished after buying a small home near a mountain, the man whose name had faded, until it returned as a myth wrapped in starlight. Back on Virea's homeworld, the jungles had begun to heal. The ash clouds from the final battle had lifted. The scars on Mount Sire were now etched with silver roots, plants that shimmered with Forerunner energy. Wherever the beacon had touched, life was returning faster than before. Virea stood at the edge of the crater where Aurak had fallen. She placed a smooth stone carved with guardian runes at its center. May your final breath never be forgotten, she whispered. A shadow moved beside her. Luke. He didn't glow anymore, not like before. He'd learned to suppress the beacon's light, to be more human again. But something still lingered behind his eyes. A calm intensity, a depth of time. I think he'd be proud of you, she said, not looking up. He gave me a future, Luke replied, and made sure I didn't run from it. She finally turned to him. What now? He smiled gently. We start small. A memory vault here. Then on Earth. Then to the Avrian colonies. Bit by bit we give people their histories back. No brainwashing, no cleansing, just the truth. Virea hesitated. And you? What about you, Luke? You could stay with the Forerunners, become something more. I am something more, he said quietly, but I'm also still a mechanic who once bathed a grumpy alien beast in a backyard shed. She laughed, and for the first time in a long while, it was pure. Elsewhere, The shadow remains in a void beyond known space. Fragments of the destroyed refractor warship hovered, barely held together. A form pulsed in the center, conscious, bitter. The refractor mind hadn't died. It had fractured, scattered like glass, and in each shard it stored one command: find the echo, devour the memory, silence the seed. It began to reform, and somewhere, far from any sun, another voice responded. Not forerunner, not refractor, something older, watching, waiting. Back on Earth, Luke stood beneath a reconstructed monolith in the Arizona desert. Children gathered around the holographic display where the memory of a forgotten civilization played like a storybook. Ships soaring, unity rising, betrayals and courage. Teachers explained it with awe, not fear. Virea stood nearby, helping install a translator node. One of the children looked up at Luke. "Is it real?" the girl asked. "Did you really save everyone?" He knelt beside her, smiling. "I didn't save everyone. I just helped them remember how to save themselves." Final scene. That night, Luke sat beneath the stars beside Virea. No warships, no glowing battles, just a blanket, a fire, and silence. "I'm glad you washed him," Virea murmured, smiling into the flames. Luke chuckled. Aurak hated every second. He smelled like acid and fire. It was necessary. They both laughed. Then Virea's eyes softened. "You could have become a god, you know." Luke leaned back, gazing up at the stars. "Maybe, but I'd rather be human, especially now that it finally means something." She rested her head on his shoulder. The stars above pulsed gently, no longer threatening, and for the first time in eons, the galaxy felt like it was breathing again. The end.